I have the CD many times over. I had to buy it 3 times because it got stolen once. And then my buddy Scotty, in an argument, threw it out his car window because he knew I loved it so much. So it's on the corner of 355 and Wisteria Drive in Germantown, Maryland, if anybody finds it. But you know, it's weird. We've had a bunch of artists on the podcast since we started doing this, but you know, when we have artists that are doing their records, it's something that for the most part, a lot of the guys I know of, I know, you know, their history, I know for, you know, and I'm a fan of theirs, but for this record, I don't think we could have gotten. So I thank Emily so much for getting you to come here and talk about arguably one of the greatest records of the 90s, man.
I've heard people say that, and I don't know. I start trying to think of other records. I can only think of the records my friends made. It's like, you know, I think of Pearl Jam and Nirvana and Mudhoney. I know there are other albums that happened in the 90s. Oh yeah, Metallica.
Metallica.
I just think a lot of the MTV stuff I kind of forget. Like, when was that? You know, so. But there were a lot of records that came out in the 90s, I imagine.
It was listen, it was a great era of music. And I mean, I can still pinpoint the moment that it changed from hair metal to quote unquote grunge. I remember watching MTV and Nelson's I Can't Live Without My Love and Affection was being played. And then immediately after they put on Smells Like Teen Spirit. And it was like, you could just feel the world shake. I mean, I want you to tell me about your first meeting with what would become Soundgarden.
I don't know how far back to go with that, because I had relationships with Chris and Hero, musical relationships as well as friendships prior to the band. Let me try to frame this right. I'm kind of trying to find a place where I can hold this. I knew Hero back in the Chicago suburbs where we grew up as teenagers. We had jammed together. We played in different bands from each other with mutual friends. Yeah. So we kind of knew each other and hang out at the same, you know, just the same scene, whatever, you know, whether it's a party or school or someone's show. And Chris, I knew because he was a roommate of mine who was also from the Chicago suburbs. He was a Seattle roommate, but he was also a Chicago suburban guy. He had a band going that didn't involve me initially. And he connected with Chris, I think, through an ad in The Rocket, which was a local, it's a local entertainment magazine. And at some point, he recruited Hero to play bass with Chris and my roommate Matt, and a drummer who was briefly another roommate. And they were doing covers, like a lot of Hendrix and Doors, and I think some Buddy Holly and Otis Redding, just, you know, kind of classic rock covers. And it wasn't that great. I mean, Chris was great, and the guitarist Matt was great, but the band was just a goofy idea. And so Hero quit. And then my roommate said, "Hey, I need a bass player. We got a few gigs lined up." So I filled in, and Chris was underage, so he could only play a few of the gigs, or he had to get a permit to play in a bar. So there were a few gigs we played where the keyboardist sang. It's just a weird kind of, it was just sort of a project to make beer money for the lead guitarist.
Yeah.
And then eventually Hero and Chris moved into a house together. So they had a nice little rhythm section there. Chris was singing in this covers band, but he's primarily a drummer. He was a really good drummer. So he found a lot more gigs playing drums. It's kind of hard to find gigs as a singer unless you start your own thing, because it's such a personal signature. People may or may not be looking for whatever it is that is your style or your inflection. And
yeah,
so they were together as a rhythm section, as kind of drumming and playing bass, and they started going through guitarists, inviting people over to jam with them, and nothing seemed to work out for those two guys guitar wise. And they discussed getting me to come by, and they hesitated because I was in school and I had a full-time job, and had a girlfriend and was just kind of busy and just kind of screwing up the things I already had. So I couldn't really add to it. They went ahead and asked me. I said, sure, I'll come by and jam with you guys. And it went great. The first time we got together, we wrote 3 songs, completely arranged. And we were amazed at how easy it was, how quick it happened in just a couple hours. Drank a bunch of beer, went downstairs, listened to either Joy Division or Zeppelin or Bauhaus. Went back, did all my school stuff the next day, and they called me in again, went back in to jam, did a couple more songs, and we were laughing and really happy at just the facility with which we communicated and wrote together. And we'd all been in bands for years, and this was the most, it just felt spontaneous and natural, and we were just kind of giddy with how easy things felt.
Yeah.
How we liked how everybody else fit in with our individual styles. I'd known Hero and we'd grown up together, so it probably influenced some of our taste, but the way he played bass just fit. His instincts fit with where I was going on guitar. Chris's drumming instincts fit. And he kind of knew me from this other band and didn't really know me as a guitarist. I was amazed like how my guitar playing fit with his idea of songwriting, and we're pretty happy with that. And then I didn't call them for like a week, and Hero kept calling. He's like, "You want to practice this weekend?" "No, I'm going out with my girlfriend." "We want to practice next Monday?" "No, I got a test." "But do you or do you not like what we did?" "Oh, I love what we did." "Well, do you want to come back and play with us?" Yes." "Well, when?" I don't know." And so the calls kept continuing, and Hero knew me well enough to make me feel guilty.
Yeah, dude.
He knows how I fuck up, and he would just kind of address me being a little bit slack in my relationships, and I said, okay, I'll come by the next day. And yeah, we just kept going like that for a while, and songs just kept pouring in, just the ideas.
You mentioned those 3 bands that you listened to, which I almost think I can hear a little bit of each one of those bands in your music. You mentioned Bauhaus, you mentioned Zeppelin, you mentioned Joy Division. Like, was there like a discussion of like we want to be like this, or we want to sound like this? Like, obviously you guys are all, music heads. So what was kind of like the first, like, inclination of the music that you guys were doing? Because obviously grunge wasn't even real at that time.
Right.
And I hate even using that term grunge. It's rock. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I think we've kind of acquiesced to the term. I mean, we kind of, fought it kicking and screaming, but now it's just there. It's like, okay, I found it to be an easy reference point when speaking to my aunts, uncles, parents, or my friends' parents. Like, what kind of music do you do? It's like somewhere between punk rock or heavy metal, and they get glassy-eyed stares, like, grunge. We're oh yeah. Like,
yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. But even there's like elements I remember. And by the way, I know, Adam, is it right now? It's the 30th anniversary of Bad Motorfinger.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Which is incredible. And so I do this show called the Goddamn Comedy Jam, where comics do stand up, then they tell a story about a song, and then they sing that song with my band. And it's like everybody's done it. And I remember right at the beginning, when we were first getting ready to do it, I told my band LMNOP, I changed the song 2 days before, and I go, I want to do Outshine. And I remember my drummer and my guitarist like looking at me, and I was like, "Are you guys okay?" And they're like, "We're not trained monkeys. That's in 7. That's like a prog rock song. You think we can just learn that quickly?" I mean, there's so many different styles in your music. So the term grunge, it's just, I never felt like it really fit with you guys. Were a part of that system, but it's like your music is so far removed. I think what Nirvana is doing, and even Kurt Cobain said, you guys were like his favorite, only other Seattle band that he loved. It's like thoughts. I don't know. You tell me.
Yeah, well, about that comment, the few times I remember when Bleach came out, and I was just I ran to Kurt at a Melvin show? He was standing there by himself, and I never do this, but I just ran in by myself, and I hated that. I just hated stand because you'd never see the band. you end up talking to people and
Yeah.
come up. But Kurt was sending by himself. I was sending by myself. I said, walked over and go, hey man, Bleach is so great. We just, the band just loves the album. Everyone, and you know, in the band, we played all the time when we're on the road. And he said, wow, thanks, man. He goes, well, consider yourselves our biggest influence. And I thought we were probably an influence, but there's a fraternal kind of warmth in the way he said that, you know. And I was like, wow, right on, because we love them. It's like, that's, you know, if I can't bash any bands, but if had it not been a band that was in our heavy rotation in our band, and the guitars and singers saying that to us, you know, it would have maybe bounced off me. But
of course,
the fact that it was someone that I had so much regard and appreciation for, that was a cool thing. Then we felt we were doing something right if we're imparting, you know, our ideas to people who were receptive to them, and incorporated that into their vision for what they'd like to do. And so going back to your question earlier about Joy Division and Bauhaus and Zeppelin, I mean, I like them individually. I think I referenced listening to those bands because it would have been a collective playlist, that it's something that Chris, Hero, and I would have listened to. Chris's taste at that time, or maybe a little bit more new wave and you know, some classic rock. And Hero's taste, I remember he was really into Susie and the Banshees, and he liked Joy Division and Bauhaus, and I did too. At the time, I think I was still at the college radio station KCMU, which has become KEXP now, which is, I guess, it's like an international streaming thing. But back then it was just a small wattage college radio station. And that would have been 84. So I was probably going through a lot of the indie hardcore, post-hardcore, you know, like the SST bands like Meat Puppets, Husker Du, Saccharine Trust, Black Flag, early Butthole Surfers. That would have been coming through the studio.
Yeah.
And the program director probably would have like put in like low rotation. And since I had the show at 2 a.m, I played a lot.
Yeah.
So that's what I would have brought by practice. Like, dude, check out this Big Boys album, you know. But somewhere in there, I think Bauhaus, Joy Division, Zeppelin would have connected with all three of us, definitely.
Yeah. So you mentioned earlier about the, you know, getting that shine from Kurt. And, you know, I know like Jerry was a huge fan from Alice in Chains. Like, was there like just, you know, when the scene started like popping up, and I know we skipped over a lot from you guys going from jamming to suddenly now you're already Soundgarden, you're doing it. But like what was that scene really like? Was it all everybody helping each other out? I mean, because you know, it's, and with, as comics, you know, it's when you're all haven't made it yet, we're all helping everybody. It's not until the shine starts and then the jealousy and all that stuff kind of comes into the scene.
I think you're totally right about that. I think there was definitely some reappraisals of careers after Nirvana hit it big. I mean, I saw a lot of weird bitterness from bands, you know, around town. They still had this love and affection and pride in one of their peers, you know, making it. But it was weird because you could see a lot of bands that hadn't had the success that, say, we had, or Alice, or the Screaming Trees even. You can see a lot of people kind of thinking, well, what about us? You know, we're good. It's like, yeah, well, you are good. Yes. So that's just a comment to the last thing you said about when the shine happens. But prior to that, it was incredibly supportive and collaborative. It wasn't that competitive at all. I'm sure if there was any competition, it was friendly. It's like, I think everyone probably wanted to outdo each other to some degree, or to come up with a cooler song. We were each other's best audience. Not a lot of bands came to Seattle. I remember Prince was on tour. He played like I think he played Prince of the Revolution. He played 3 shows in Portland and none in Seattle because the promoters didn't think there's a large enough African-American audience in Seattle to book Prince, which was a crazy thing. I only heard that because I was at the radio station. Like, what the? So and the only bands that came through were like Black Flag and Husker Du, the SST bands. So we'd pretty much end up at each other's shows, and we'd play for each other. And I think for that reason, that's why we were supportive of each other, because we saw each other not necessarily as competitors, but as peers, and also as entertainment.
No, of course. Also, it's such a weird time in music for what you guys, your earlier stuff is so different from anything that was on the radio besides your radio station. You know what I mean? It's like it's like it wasn't until that, like, I would say like early 90s, it really started breaking.
Yeah.
I mean, it was ever before that, it was such a huge show in music where it's like, you know, you see like the Motley Crue, and nothing against Motley Crue. I love Motley Crue, but it's the show, it's the arena rock heavy metal, which is, you know, and so to see, you know, you guys take what was cool about punk, which is the do-it-yourself, the dark, the pogoing, the dirtiness of those shows, and putting that into suddenly becoming mainstream. So tell me about that. That's what I really want to know is what was it like, you know, what were you guys dealing with when Soundgarden started getting their first real break? Where you saw the change in money and everything and audience size?
You know, I think there were a handful of bands that were having success locally. I mean, I remember promoters coming up and saying, "You guys, this is the Door record at the Rainbow. This is the Door record at the Central. This is the most people this place has ever had on a Tuesday night. So next time we're going to book you on a Saturday." And things like that. And,
weekend gig, weekend pay. Oh my God! Not just for free beer.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. And I mean, that was a big deal. But I don't think we're pretty aware and conscious of our friends and our peers who were perfectly satisfied being a big fish in a little pond and being like the big men on the block, and we weren't.
Of course.
That wasn't really our. You know, it's like, why do we want to be the big man on the block? We don't go to anyone's parties really, so. So I mean, if you went to party, there'd be the guys in the really hip band. I thought, I guess they've made it, you know. They're out by the keg and everyone's talking to them. So I guess that's it for them. And for us, it's like, I'm gonna go home and read or watch a movie with my girlfriend.
What are we gonna do? They got prime keg location. We can't even get up there. I don't even have a cup.
But I think they were satisfied with that. They had achieved whatever it was. You know, I don't think they could see much beyond the keg in the backyard.
Yeah.
So what I guess when the attention came from various labels, either large national indies or major labels, I don't think our audience had grown to the size that you would describe in the early 90s or late 80s. I think it was certainly that way locally, but that, once again, that wasn't particularly satisfactory. We weren't content with simply having, you know, the members of all the other bands in Seattle at our shows. You know, we wanted to certainly play for all the members of bands in Portland.
Not to cut you off, but did everybody in the band at that time see the same, was on the same page with that vision?
Yeah. Everyone but our second drummer, Scott, who the guy preceded Matt and came after Chris, right? Anteceded, right? No. And Scott was a little bit older than us. He had a son and he had a regular job. He couldn't make the same commitment and was very clear about that. So at some point we had to move on.
Yeah.
You know. But otherwise, yeah, the rest of us were all on that page, because we would see our friends, we'd see people being really content, being like, it was just weird. It seemed more like there was an aspect of the satisfaction that some of our friends had, which seemed a little bit more like high school. It's like, really, this is your thing. You have a rich social life and get to party with everyone in the university district, right on. For you.
Yeah, man, that's great. I mean, we've all met people like that. I mean, but it's like in a band, it's like every member has to have that goal, which is just like, if we're gonna do this, we're gonna fucking do this. We have to give it our best.
Yeah, I mean, not to say that it wasn't a goal. I'm sure we probably were enough. We were probably daydreamers enough that we would have those kind of, that kind of delusion, I suppose.
Sure.
But I don't think we set unrealistic goals. I think we just were not super sociable. I was probably the most sociable guy in the band.
Yeah.
Because I could make eye contact if I had to. And I think that we just simply weren't content. It's like we were, just being the big guy at the party or on campus, which would be the appropriate metaphor, I suppose, or cliche. That wasn't really our thing. So I think we just liked coming up with songs, and we were our own best audience. We loved it when our friends and bands liked our new songs. And I think there are bands we liked from LA, Minnesota, Austin, Portland. I think we wanted to go and play with them. We wanted them to hear our songs. We wanted to hear we knew their stuff. I think there's probably, to some degree, we wanted to be part of a community that was influential to us and inspiring to us, and whether that was associated with a particular record label or the type of bands that would be gracious enough to go out of their way to come to Seattle from. It's 14 hours from San Francisco, so
for sure.
If they made the trip, then right on.
Was there a band that you were, I mean, I'm not saying in direct competition with, in the sense where you were like, you guys, you had beef with them, but somebody that was like, all right, they just, like you said, Nirvana put out Bleach, and you're like, all right, we have to, it's almost kind of like the Beach Boys, Beatles. It's like they heard Pet Sounds and like, we have to write Sgt. Pepper.
Yeah, it wasn't, not Nirvana, because we were, I mean,
way different band.
Well, no, we loved them a lot, but they're a little bit younger. They came around a few years. I mean, I think
after.
Yeah, I think we formed in '84, and they were like '87 or something. 80, and those few years is a big deal at that age when you're in your 20s or teens, and so we're quite a bit bigger than them, at least in this community. And there were a lot of bands, and there were a lot of bands that were bigger than them in terms of popularity and attendance and influence. They just happened to be better. They just weren't as big yet. Yeah. So when Nevermind broke through, what that did was catapult them onto an international stage that was not accessible to the rest of us. But in terms of the local sort of competition or cooperation, they weren't really, they weren't they were influential, but they weren't perhaps the band that we were vying for stage time with,
Yeah.
That band would have been Green River, then later Mother Love Bone. Green River they started a few months before us, and the guys in the band were a bit more sociable and connected with other folks. Mark Arm, the singer for Green River, and Jeff Ament and Stone Gossard. They were a lot better at just networking with other musicians. They're nice guys. They're friendly. Chris is a little bit more withdrawn, and Hero had a degree of aloofness. I mean, we're nice guys, but I mean, we weren't dicks. But there's a sort of, we didn't think we were better than anybody else. We just thought that they all sucked like we did. So people suck, and we're not any better. I think we're just, I don't want to say wallflowers. I don't want to say that we thought we were better than anyone else. I think it was just a contempt we had for being human, and we were part of it. And so I don't think, like I said, I was the most sociable guy in the band.
Yeah, but they need one of you.
That.
They need one of you. It's like, it can't all just be like, hey, what's going on? I just this is a song. You can't. You can. I mean, so I assume that some people have made it this by not being able to, have any real social, interaction qualities. But I mean, the music speaks for itself.
People wanted to be around Chris. People wanted to be around Hero. They were smart. They were tall. They were handsome. They're talented people. Like, girls had crushes on Chris. Girls had crushes on Hero. They just weren't that comfortable in their skin hanging around a bunch of other people. It's hard to explain. They're more comfortable like behind a book or watching a movie.
Yeah.
Or just be playing their instrument. I know I remember people thinking that, like, thinking Chris was stuck up, and it's like, no, not at all. And people, it's like, well, what explains his aloofness? That he'd be more comfortable if he was at home, playing guitar or drums or that's all. It's just, I think there's just, I felt uncomfortable around people. So I would generally, my discomfort was expressed by nervously talking, which I think people interpreted as engaging and social.
Yeah.
It was just me kind of throwing words between me and the other people on my way to the exit, which I was slow to get to if there was beer around. So
that's me every day, dude. If I'm not on stage, I'm like, what am I? I'm still thinking of something I said 3 days ago. I'm just like, why did you ask that? Where were you guys at right before you started working on this record, Superunknown?
God, let me think about that. A lot of our with Superunknown and Bad Motorfinger, the sessions are kind of split up. I know Down on the Upside had there was a tour somewhere in there. I know we did it 5 weeks with Neil Young. That was a great tour, by the way. It's back when he had Steve the Colonel Cropper and Duck Dunn playing.
Oh, wow!
And I think it was the Booker T band, and that was in the middle of something. I think Superunknown had some breaks in the sessions as well. It might have been for a few other projects. So I'm trying to think of where we were before. I know we were rehearsing. We were using Pearl Jam studio at one point. I think prior to that, Chris and Hero had shared a few houses together. And when Chris split rooming with Hero, he was rooming with Andy Wood, the singer from Mother Love Bone. And I think that's what we were last talking about. Green River and Mother Love Bone.
Yeah.
They're both really popular bands. Generally as a consequence of the popularity of members like Mark Arm and Jeff Ament and Stone Gossard. Like they definitely were they had better social skills than Soundgarden did.
Yeah.
They would. So it was between those two bands, Green River and Soundgarden, and then Love Bone got together with Andy from Malfunction, and they had an initial boost. They're just the buzz about the guys from Malfunction and Green River, starting a new band was a big deal. But at that time, Soundgarden kind of had a little jump and boost too. It might have been because the Sub Pop record, Screaming Life, or maybe Ultra Mega OK. So we were kind of getting buzz around the country because of these indie labels. And Green River had a little bit too, but so around that, those are the bands that we would kind of reference. And they were friends of ours. I went to college with Mark and, met him in a modern philosophy class, and he's wearing a Minor Threat, button-down shirt, and brought his skateboard to class. I go,
yeah,
I talked to that guy.
Fuck yeah.
I would see his bands at shows, and, we became friends. So those were kind of the two, and there's one band that's a little bit bigger than both of us, bigger than Green River and Soundgarden, and that was the U-Men. They were like the big band on the block. They were the band that, you know, all the other guys in bands would talk about, and
Yeah.
they're the, you know, they kind of had a connection with the art scene, and some galleries and people who managed them and worked with them were associated with they're just cool as shit and hip, and and you know, the opposite of us, I guess, you know. So but both Green River and Soundgarden got pretty big, and by the Love Bone and Soundgarden ended up being, we would draw more when we played than the U-Men, which was because of different things. I think it's the way our records were received when we made those indies, and I think the U-Men broke up at some point too. That probably helped. So I kind of digress and return to your question, then split from another question. So.
No, but that's great, because that was the perfect answer for exactly what we were talking about right before we cut out. But yeah, so you guys are all starting to take off. You have 2 records, and then you put out Bad Motorfinger, which is a classic. And definitely,
I kind of know where we're at then.
Yeah.
With Superunknown, it kind of came together. We were doing some stuff in the studio at Avast, which is Avast Recording Studios, what's called, run by Stuart Hallerman, an old stoner friend of Heroes from high school in Chicago, and a friend of mine who I met back then. He's in Seattle. He was in Olympia and started a recording studio and did all this. And so we'd go out there and demo. Chris was demoing some stuff at home. But at some point, we ended up in Pearl Jam space. And that's the connection there, is that the Love Bone and us, we were both really big, but we were friends of each other. You know, Chris would go bike riding with Jeff Ament, and you know, Mark and I would occasionally run into each other and talk about politics or some book. And then Andy died, and Andy had been a housemate of Chris's. So he went from living with Hero to living with Andy, and then they split, and Chris went, you know, to be with his girlfriend, and Andy was with his girlfriend, and Andy OD'd, and that was just a real heavy shock to everyone. It just knocked everyone on their ass. It was definitely upsetting. So Love Bone was done. Pearl Jam kind of formed out of the ashes. They had a rehearsal studio downtown underneath a gallery. I think it was Galleria Potato Head is what it was called. And we had didn't really have a rehearsal space, because we didn't have the house that he and Hero had, or he and Andy had. We ended up rehearsing at Pearl Jam space on the days they weren't there. Matt was not a member of Pearl Jam at the time. So we'd go down their basement and would write songs, listen to home tapes that Chris made or that Matt made. And I never did that. I would just bring in riffs, go, so here's the idea, here's the B part. I would just memorize it and show it to them. And once I showed it to Matt, it wouldn't be forgotten, because no, it goes like this. Oh yeah, that part. And that was it. We'd work on songs there, and we thought we had enough songs to start getting an album. I'm making myself out of frame.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, you're good. That's probably what we were doing then. Then we started talking about producers, and a few producers' names came up that I remember vetoing a few. And I remember Chris and Matt and Ben vetoing a few. We decided on Michael Beinhorn. Then he came up to sit in on our jam, listen to some demos and watch us play, and then threw in his 2 cents. And we thought we could probably live with him, because he's just going to be in the background anyways. We were a little bit arrogant that way. We would kind of think, well, it's whatever we decide we want to do is what we're going to do. So really, you can just get anyone up here to produce it. They'll be over there. And, you know, as long as they're inobtrusive, it'll be fine.
So what was the writing process like? I mean, was everybody on the same page? It sounds like everybody was on the same page, but were there arguments? How did the band kind of settle an argument?
There were disagreements. There's rarely arguments. I mean, from the earliest days when we were just a 3-piece, Hero and Chris and I would have arguments about arrangements of songs. the arguments were always constructive. They always led to a better, a better insight into the song and where we should go. But it was just convincing the other people, and sometimes you're wrong. You do a song live a few times and think, you know what? I think your idea was a little bit better. I don't think this is working. Let's go back and do it the other way. So that was all part of the process, the democratic, constructive working out of what we're doing. I think, so more often than not, there are beneficial consequences to the process. I'm trying to think about Superunknown. There was definitely, I think some of the arguments would have been whether a song should be included or not. For instance, we might all love a song. It's like, but is it a Soundgarden song? It's like, yeah, I love that. I love that if that was on the new GNR record or the new U2 record. And
yeah,
but I don't know if that's us. It's like, well, it can be us. Well, how? Or should we just? There's stuff that I remember not liking, like around Loud in Love or Bad Motorfinger, that an album or two later I ended up thinking, no, this is great, this will work. Stuff that didn't seem right in Loud in Love or Bad Motorfinger that was just perfect for Superunknown or Down the Upside, and vice versa. We'd revisit things.
how many holdovers did you have? How many songs were already kind of like, yeah, for Superunknown? Like, how many were you like, all right, well, I feel like this is the wreck? Well, because really the question is like so Bad Motorfinger's out, it's got its sound, you know what I mean? And Superunknown is a way more mature record than Bad Motorfinger. It's really where it's taking that Soundgarden sound and then also like still taking it in a prog rock progression. There's still some heavy metal. There's still some punk rock stuff with like kickstand. Do you know what I mean? So it's different. Like, did you guys go into it basically knowing like, all right, we want to make this record way different than Bad Motorfinger?
We always wanted to move forward, but we look at the material we had. It just so happened the material would move forward. As our tastes change and shift, as our interests and abilities change and shift, Chris was getting much better and prolific as a songwriter. In the early days, he didn't write as much, except for he'd write lyrics, which makes sense. It's hard it must be, when I think about bands where the primary lyricist is not the singer, I just imagine what it's like to put words in someone else's mouth and have some guy sing someone else's words. So he was great for lyrics, but he wasn't as good on guitar. He was great on drums, but so writing riffs and chords kind of took him more time. But by Bad Motorfinger, he was super prolific. I think he learned a lot from his relationship and friendship with Andy Wood. Andy would just, don't edit yourself, just write it, put it out there. It'll become something, or the band will help you, or you can revisit it. Just don't edit it, don't stop, just put stuff out there. And Chris, when Andy passed, you just see Chris go snap, and he just started throwing ideas out, and he wouldn't second guess them. Everyone's a little bit of a cynic, so you might hesitate, don't want Matt and Hero and Chris to hear this riff. Nah, they're not going to like it. Throw it out and bring something else in.
Yeah.
And everyone did that, and Chris did that. He was very self-conscious. And at that point, after, right before Bad Motorfinger, he said, fuck it. I don't know what's in Kim's head or what's in Matt's head. It's like, I don't. I'm second guessing myself. I'm just going to play for them, see what they think. And he'd get surprised sometimes. Like, we'd love a song that he thought was that he wasn't sure we'd like. And we'd end up loving it. It becomes part of the set. We recorded, and Superunknown was like that. It's just, I think the only thing that I could think of that we revisited was Spoon Man. When Spoon Man was part of that, that was kind of on the Bad Motorfinger period when we were doing did singles. Chris demoed a handful of songs for the Pontier tape, which is basically something that I think initially as a gift for Cameron Crowe. And it's like, you saw a list of fake song titles that Jeff Ament had made, and Chris thought it'd be funny to write songs with those titles.
Yeah.
And just what would those sound like? And he kind of did it, over a period of time, and then presented them to Cameron, and then Jeff, and then to the band, me and Matt and Ben, and they listened to them, and but yeah, Flood of Girls not very Soundgarden-y, and Disappearing. It's these aren't cool songs, but you just wouldn't have seen them on Bad Motorfinger, right? And then Matt was the one sometime before Superunknown where he came into practice. He goes, you know what, guys? I've been listening to the Pontier tape, and there's one song there that I think really I'd love to play, and I think it'd be perfect for Soundgarden once we did it, and it was Spoon Man. And he really insisted. I go, you think so? And it had been like maybe a year, and I thought, I don't know if any of that Pontier tape is really us, And Matt said, no, let's work on Spoon Man. Let's figure it out and do that, because I think that's us. We did it. We learned it. It was still kind of like you had to get over the prejudice, the initial judgment of the song from a couple of years before, and we did. Eventually, we recorded it. It's like, I can't imagine not playing that song. I cannot imagine that not being a Soundgarden song. But it took a while. When Chris wrote it, it wasn't with us in mind. It was this other thing in mind. So yeah, it took a while.
Yeah. What were some of the harder songs to write on the record?
One of the hardest songs to learn was Limo Wreck. That's in a lot of weird time signatures. Got some cool moves in there. You have to ask the individuals. I would think it'd be difficult to write Black Hole Sun. Because it's very singer-songwriting. It's kind of piano-y. It's not a spontaneous song that would jump off your guitar. It's not a blues riff, it's not a punk rock riff. It doesn't, there's not a natural groove to it. It's definitely composed with a vocal in mind. There's probably guitar riffs in there that provoked and stimulated the songwriting, but it's definitely, you can see how it's framing the vocal, So Chris isn't one to be super divulgent about that. Maybe after a few beers, he might have said something to me, but then, like I said, it was a few beers, and I might have forgotten the next day. But I'd imagine that'd be a little bit more difficult. It's not a pick up a guitar and whip out this riff, or look what I just learned. It was just something about it was definitely assembled.
What was like the vibe in the studio because he brought that to you guys, right? So. Yeah. When he brings that, that's probably the most ballady Soundgarden song you've had up to that point. And it's much darker, much out there. It's not, when I say ballad, I'm just saying,
I know what you're saying. It's got the arpeggiated verses, and it sounds like little piano parts of da-da-da-da-da-da. Yeah. And then it has a big crescendo, like a Stairway to Heaven or Dream On, if things get kind of heavy, and a crazy guitar solo. When he brought that in, well, for one, it was Sand's guitar solo. He probably recorded some guitar effects, like with some delay, just to indicate, like, yeah, that should be trippy and crazy or something. And so we would have just heard the verse and choruses and focus on that. And my initial response probably would have been, this is an amazing song. This is catchy and hooky. I don't see us in it. And I think everyone kind of was the same thing. I think, Matt and Ben thought everyone just loved the song. This is a great song. How do we fit in this song?
Yeah.
And I remember Hero came by the studio. He'd been out of the band for 4 or 5 years, but he came by, and I think Matt played him the demo, and Hero just started laughing. He goes, "Holy shit, that's your hit, that thing." And he said the same thing when he heard "Smells Like Teen Spirit." He's like, "That thing's a hit."
That's it.
He heard Black Hole Sun. He goes, "That's your hit, you guys." He goes, "Are you going to do that song?" And we're like,
"You're like, it's really the sound."
I think we loved the song. It was such a good song. You know, I'm trying to make an observation that doesn't sound like I'm patronizing you.
Patronize. It's feel free to patronize.
Any particular gender. Do you remember when you're in high school, you're a teenager, or junior high would be even better. Remember the junior high girl who'd like come to school with some really loud clothing, like she was experimenting and being grown up, and it just didn't fit her, but it was probably cool, but not appropriate. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I know exactly what you mean.
Seeing other girls like that, and then it's like they're going from being kids to adults, and they're wearing things that probably look really great on the rack, but then you have to put it on a human being and not look like a fucking road flare.
Yeah.
And you see that at the mall, at every school. Well, I think that was it. It was like, this song sounds really cool. Is it going to fit on us? It's like, it's really cool right there. But once we put this thing on, and we take it out there wearing this thing, is it us? And I think we took it as a challenge. We took it as a challenge to learn the song, make it ours. And we did. And I think we would not have done that had we not liked the song. The fact that we liked the song, we didn't think it was a fit, we made it fit. We said, let's learn it. Let's see if we can make it ours. And we did. And I think for me personally, I think it was coming up with the two different guitar solos that kind of added an element that wasn't necessarily, it wasn't there. That kind of wildness and the chaos. It's like everything seems so organized and there and floral and pretty, and then we add parts that make it sound like it's falling apart, and then it's more Soundgarden.
I mean, but besides like having Hero say that this is your hit, I mean, did you ever expect it to be? I mean, arguably the most recognized. It's arguably in the top 10. I'd say songs of the 90s, definitely in the top. I think it's the top song. I think Rolling Stone magazine put it as like the number one song. No, Smell Like Teen Spirit is number one, but I'm pretty sure Black Hole Sun is like, if they're not two, it's number 3 as one of the most popular and best songs of the grunge era.
It's probably definitely memorable and up there. Well, like I said, we knew it was a great song. It was just a matter of whether it was a great Soundgarden song. And it is, it was, but initially that was the concern.
Sure.
We didn't want to be the dress that entered the classroom before the person.
Yeah. So what about with the sequencing of the record? I mean, like, like whose decision, like, how did you guys start like laying out all these tracks? Cause you have, I guess, Fell on Black Days is kind of, it's not, I wouldn't call that a ballad either. I mean, I guess they're both the two ballads of the record, but they're much darker. So it's like, so how did you start laying out the tracks? Because you had recorded how many? Because there's 15 on the track. There's 15 on the album coming in at 70 minutes.
Yeah.
And
of course the vinyl release had the bonus of, and the vinyl international releases, we included the bonus song She Likes Surprises. So
which is great. Yeah, dude. So how did you start like laying out the record once you had all the songs? Well, I should also ask you, what was the easiest to record? Because I said what's to write, but I was saying more, what I really meant was to record. What were the hard ones and the easiest ones to record?
I think Spoon Man was somewhat straightforward. I guess if you ask the producer, he'd have to turn around and record a bunch of spoons. You have to record artists, spoon solo, make sure that had, whatever, sibilance and percussive pronunciation. For me, Superunknown, since, I wrote most of the riffs in that song, it was pretty easy for me to whip that out. But
by the way, I'm gonna stop you right there. It's super. That's my favorite song on the record, because when that dude, when that, like, I've been listening to this record for years, but I've been really digging into it recently. And when that drum just hits it, it's like, "Pah, if you don't want," and it just fucking goes. I mean, thank God I haven't been driving recently, because that's an 80, 90 mile an hour ticket, dude.
Wow.
It is a perfect driving song. It rips, it rules. And it's one of those gems that, if you just stick to what's popular and what's been played on the radio, you're going to hear great songs. But it's when you dive in, I almost think that the songs that weren't the singles are your best songs on that record.
Wow, cool. That's kind of how I listen to records too. That I usually, it was all the deeper cuts. Maybe you would agree with me about this. Like when I listened to a band I liked, it was rarely ever the singles, always something else on the album that would catch me.
Yeah.
And I don't know if it's because I heard it less frequently or if I was better able to make it mine, if there was something personal about, either uncovering that particular track or just carrying it with you, like it's like, this is my song, or
Oh, for sure.
like the other one belongs to the world, but it's out there. This one's mine.
Oh, I'm 100% like that. I mean, I listen, I'm always the guy that's like, I get to the band early, and then when they blow up, I'm like, you should have heard the stuff they did a while ago. I mean, that's the cool stuff, dude.
Yeah, I think I've done that, definitely. It's cool. Mike McCready loves Superunknown. I think that's his favorite track.
I mean, you're opening the record with "Let Me Drown," which is a banger, and "My Wave's" a banger, and then it's almost like you're building like a perfect mixtape. When you're sequencing a record, it's like you come out strong, you hit them with another one, then you bring it down. You do "Fell on Black Days." So, like, when you started laying out all of these songs, like, was there arguments of where they went? Was this the producer?
With track listing?
Yeah.
In the early days, it was a little bit more collaborative, maybe leaned a little bit more toward me, how the songs be laid out. I would tend to argue for, well, you want to start the album with a big punch. Something's usually got some energy and it's visceral and quick. You want to start that way, usually, not with your necessarily with your hit or with the ballad or whatever.
Yeah.
And I was thinking of vinyls. You want the disc side to open and close with something that's memorable. It stays with you. So they ended on side A and they have to go to the store. You want that song to be something that's strong and stays with them. So now you have to judge what songs will do that. What songs you feel are strong. Because if you're making the album, at some point, hopefully you believe that all the material there is strong, right?
Yeah.
So at some point you have to appraise that. You kind of look at what everyone thinks. By Bad Motorfinger, even though I was like the DJ, and so I had that early influence. Later on, Chris started lean more toward what he would like in terms of the segue, because he had a sense of the dynamic through vocal performance and key changes. Like to him, it would be, we don't want to put too many songs next to each other that are in D or that are in E or in the same register. So he would think about moving it dynamically that way. But then live, it came down to Matt became the catcher. He'd call the pitch. He'd say, well, this works dynamically in terms of tempo, in terms of energy, So Chris might have come up with the track listing for the album, and then every show, Matt would come up with the set list, and then we'd have to look at, and because he's thinking about his energy and he's understanding the show in terms of what he's putting out, fast songs, slow songs, what songs are better to get out of the way early, what songs are a little bit more demanding for him, and he's not sure he'd have the energy for Jesus Christ Pose in the encore, things like that. So he worked things up dynamically in terms of tempo and the drums, and it made sense. I would have to interject things such as, all these songs, Matt, are in different tunings. I will be walking to my guitar tech and getting a new guitar every song.
Yeah.
You guys will be in a groove. You'll be starting a song, and I'll be taking a swig of Jack Daniels and getting a new guitar put on, and it's going to look really stupid for me to leave the stage after every song.
Every song.
So let's okay, how do we do that? Well, let's bunch them together. Here's some D tunings. Here's some DG. Here's the EBB tunings. Let's get those at least blocked together so I can hold on to a guitar for 3 or 4 songs. And then within that context, Matt would come up with the dynamics of the tempo and things like that. And then Chris would interject, you know what? Too many of these songs in a row are in my register, in the same register, and it's going to make it dynamically boring. You're start losing people. So they were each thinking about what was of interest to them in keeping things flowing and dynamic, and we'd all work together that way. And once Matt had that understanding of what I'm doing, and with the different key changes, tuning changes, and what Chris is doing in terms of what key he's singing in, then Matt he was the guy. He what everyone was doing. He'd make the calls. And on the studio records, for the most part, Chris would lay it out, and then we'd say the same thing. It's like, you know what? We should end with something a little bit more aggressive, a little bit heavier and hooky on this thing. So you think so? Yeah, just flip these 2 songs around. So, are you sure? And then we talk about it. It's like, okay. So that was that. In the last few records, Chris would do the track listing, and live it was Matt, but early on it was the DJ.
I'm looking at the track listing right now, and I think it's just listed. Every song is in the right place.
If we did it all over again, it would still start with Let Me Drown.
I would say, because I was always like, God, I don't see why they wouldn't open up Superunknown with Superunknown, because it just bangs so hard. But like Let Me Drown really is the thesis statement of this record. You're getting the vibe of what you're getting. You're getting like, deeper, darker lyrics too. And it's like, it's setting you up for this journey, which is like, to go from that into My Wave and into Fell on Black Days. It's perfect. It's perfect.
You're right. It's perfect to end with, like Suicide, and
yes.
start with Let Me Drown, and everything else. There are other things that we would consider. We would think about what the likely singles might be. We had our own instincts. The record label, once they heard what we were doing, they throw in their 2 cents, usually to our manager, Susan Silver, at the time. And then Susan would say, hey, Al and Jim, Al Cafaro and Jim Guerno at the label, they really think that Fell on Black Days is going to be a strong single. It's like, okay, well, if these songs have the attention already, I know as a record and rock fan, since I was a kid, the first song on the record is like the one that's going to stay with me when I go to school the next day. And you could distribute the interest in the record that way. You could have the singles. The singles they're going to hear that everywhere. You can put that in the middle if you want to of the album, but then you want them to like the whole damn thing. It's not a single and a bunch of filler. It's just in the 70s, there were bands that definitely made albums like that. Here are the hits, and everything else is filler.
Oh yeah.
And the label would treat it like that. It's like, here, do a few covers and do that one song for a B-side. But everything had to be strong with us, or we shouldn't put it on the record. So then it's like, okay, this is probably not going to be a single, Let Me Drown, but it's strong. Let's put it in front. Let's end with this. This may not be a single either. It could be, but it's way too long. I don't see how we can edit it for radio. Let's put that at the end. And then on the back cover of Superunknown, it's like that was Chris's title. Prior to that, most of the titles were all mine. And then he suggested Superunknown. It was like, that is amazing. and
Yeah.
and then we did the song, and it was the same thing. It's like, well, it may not be a single. It probably was to start with Let Me Drown. And then I came up with the graphic idea. It's like, well, in the back we have the songs, the track list. We'd have just be black on black, or what do we do, gray on black or white on black, depending on where we marketed it. And we'll just put the song Superunknown, highlight it in a different color, in yellow. And that's the way we title it, because we'd already done that before with Screaming Life, band name on the front, album name on the back, Loud in Love, band name on the front, album title on the back, right? Yeah, so Superunknown, band name on the front, on the back, track list, and the album title is implied by highlighting Superunknown. I remember there was some resistance to that I remember, I think our then manager Susan said, but then people they'll give too much emphasis to that one song. It's not likely going to be a single. It's like, no, well, that's the album title. It's also on the spine.
Yeah.
And so we did it that way. And now you have, which my point was that you have the singles, so there are 5 of them. You have the song that kicks it off, and the song that ends, and you have the song that's highlighted in yellow. So you're giving some weight to that. You're redistributing it around the album in terms of people's, its emphasis, at least with how the listener might, file things cognitively.
Sure. What was, you mentioned network notes? Well, besides, because I was looking over the singles, because I mean, I had a TV show, the goddamn Comedy Jam. The network notes ruined my TV show. But see, I'm looking at the singles and the way they're released, Kim. I mean, you have Spoon Man first, The Day I Tried to Live, Into Black Hole Sun, My Wave, and Fell on Black Days. You said Fell on Black Days was the one that they were like, this is the fucking hit. But you're coming out with Spoon
They knew
Man
Black Hole
first.
Sun was a hit, but they knew Fell on Black Days probably would also be strong as well.
Which I mean, all of it. It's like all of these songs are played on WHFS, the radio station in DC that I grew up listening to. DC 101. It's all of this is like, I've heard all of these on there, but besides them recommending trying to get that as the first single, was there any network notes that just you're like, thank God we didn't do it? And what was the most ridiculous one, if you can remember?
When you say network notes, you mean like from the label? Or?
From the label, yeah. I just called it. I put it in television terms.
They were pretty good about letting us do what
you wanted to do,
by and large. They really wanted us to be on the Grammys and to play Black Hole Sun on the Grammys. And we vetoed that because they were emphasizing, you're going to play for 1 billion people worldwide. It's like, then why would we want 1 billion people hear us play our, power ballad?
Yeah, you want to rock.
Should they know you got the name Soundgarden and we come up with Black Hole Sun? What are they going to think? There was some keyboard synthesizer power ballad song or something, or band, or should we go on the Grammys and do Spoon Man or My Wave? And they really said, well, Black Hole Sun's nominated. It's like, yeah, but so Spoon Man. They pushed Black Hole Sun. I said, I don't know. And they go, 1 billion people. I go, 1 billion people getting the wrong brand. And so we didn't do it. And it was the same thing with the single release. They wanted to release Fell on Black Days because it was getting a lot of attention at radio. But I think we had just done Black Hole Sun. I said, we got to get another rock song out there. And if we do Black Hole Sun and Fell on Black Days, it's like, you're giving this album an identity that might be a little bit different from the majority of the band's material.
Yeah.
I wanted to get My Wave out there. And there was some resistance, mostly because radio was picking up on Fell on Black Days, but they did it. They released My Wave as a single, and it wasn't received as strongly as Fell on Black Days, of course. And they followed it up with Fell on Black Days. So
you said about not being received as strongly. Did you see a change in your audience? Because obviously you had to with a song like Black Hole Sun. You're gonna get fans that are, it's pop. It's a rock song. But you know what I'm saying? It's so popular that it transcends the grunge kids. It's now, because I remember Lauren, I'm going to give her a shout out. Lauren Rostek. I'll never forget our day at the pool. I'm not going to go into that, but Lauren Rossack was the one that played Black Hole Sun for me. And I was like, fuck, man, because I only knew Outshined at that point. And it's a different sound. So what did you see in the change, besides just record sales? Because you sold, if I'm not mistaken, 9 million from this record. So like
that much, but maybe worldwide. Maybe it was.
Yeah, worldwide. That's what it says. Oh, it's blah, 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 certified 5 times platinum, worldwide 9 million.
Wow.
So it's your most successful record. So obviously you're going to see a different change and a divot in the people coming to your shows and buying shit and getting compliments from. So
yeah, the demographic definitely changed. Early on, you had the kids with the sleeveless denim jacket with maybe Motorhead or Black Flag.
Yeah.
Note on the back, you know what I'm saying?
I'm wearing that tonight at the Comedy Cellar, dude.
So those are the kids in the front row, right? Maybe a leather jacket and a black sleeveless denim or rock t-shirt. And then by Superunknown, those kids were probably out in the parking lot in the hood of their car, or they're not going to see Soundgarden anymore. And so you saw a lot more women in the front row parked in front of the singer, right? Yeah. You still got those guys in the show, but they weren't in the front anymore. They're kind of
you couldn't afford it. Yeah, dude. They're a heavy metal parking lot, bro. They're like, yeah.
Judas Priest. That was a change in the orientation at the show. People who perhaps weren't there early on supporting us, perhaps because their interests weren't as musicians or just whatever rock dude identity. That started changing. You get more frat boys and more housewives when you get a top 40 hit. It's just the way it is. It was that way for Pearl Jam and Nirvana, and it was that way for us. So your fans are often like you. If you're an honest band and you're not pandering, you're playing music that is you're writing songs that are about you, from where you come from, to people that come from a similar place and are about, and our audience could have been me or Chris or Hero or the guys in Mudhoney or the guys in the Screaming Trees or Nirvana. That's who our crowd was. And it was that way for years. Now it was people who maybe made my espresso in the morning or a friend of my mom's, or someone who's not the person in the philosophy class with me, but the person who's maybe in the business class across the campus.
Yeah.
It was just people you could identify perhaps demographically, but not people you necessarily associated with. They weren't perhaps part of your scene or your subculture. So yeah, that little subculture thing bursts open, and you get people from different walks of life, and that's both it's mostly good. I don't think there's too much.
There's nothing bad. Yeah, it's just more money, more like you're still cool, you're still making badass music.
You don't want to lose your identity, and you don't want to all of a sudden say those are the people I play for. You still got to play for yourself and the people who you are and the people who are like you. I mean, otherwise you're pandering, and what you're doing is probably dishonest. If you keep attending to yourself and your peers, then that should be I think that should be your first audience.
I think even going into your next record, Down on the Upside, I mean, you if I'm not mistaken, because I don't have the track listing in front of me, but you open up with Pretty Hate or Pretty Pain? Pretty News. Thank you. Yeah. You open up with that. I mean, that's like, you're going right back to rock again. And I mean, there's a couple more down tempo songs on that, but it's like, it's just you guys pushing a little bit further, for that record. So it wasn't like you just kept writing Black Hole Suns.
Right.
You know what I mean? It's like, you're like, no, we're a rock band and we're going to stay that way.
Yeah.
Yeah, dude. It's
still the easiest sell. I mean, if Chris or Matt or I came to practice with a song, it's going to be received well if it's A, if it's rock, and B, it's something we haven't done before or heard before. I think we'd get, it must be short attention spans, but if we brought a song to practice and it's like, this kind of sounds like the song that we did before, kind of sounds like a song from this album. It's like, yeah, maybe you're right. Let's change it up a bit. We wanted everything to have its own identity and to be distinct. We avoided formulas within ourselves, and sometimes it was odd time signatures or different tunings or an arrangement that was unique. Like Rusty Cage is an insanely cool arrangement.
It's so
cool. The way that song moves, linearly, just going like this fast thing, and then this ending with that weird heavy off time groove. That's just a cool arrangement. It's not verse chorus.
No.
We always did things to keep it interesting, especially if you can keep Matt interested. When you get a god drummer like Matt is, who's both very focused and also gets easily bored. if you can keep him interested and then you did your job. You can get a guy like if he can see something musically engaging in what you're doing, then you've done something. And the same all around. If I wrote something, I'd want to impress Ben, Matt, and Chris. Chris wrote something, you want to impress me, Matt, and Ben. And that was it. So you can't do the same thing.
Oh, who? Because I got to ask, and I know we're going to wrap up soon, but who was always the first one to go, let's put this in a different time signature? Who's the odd time signature guy in the band?
We never did that, except for the song Heretic. And it was me who argued with Chris and Hero. But we never did that because songs were just, we'd often not know. We just, a song kind of moves and grooves in a way that you might walk. If you should be able to walk it. And odd time signatures, people don't walk in, but you might think that way or talk that way.
Yeah.
And there's a way that a song grooves, and it's the way you dance or walk. And you can kind of imagine it walking, and none of us are good dancers. So it's in your head, and there's a way you move in your head, and it's very natural. We bring it to the band, we learn it, and someone might have a little knot in trying to learn it. It's like, what's going on there? It's like, oh, well, it does this. Like, oh, I see it. Cool. What time signature is that in? Huh. And then either I would sit there and go, or Matt would sit there and go, and we come up with a different number. I think it's 6. Really? I think it's, I don't know, man. I think it's just 3, and it's doing this up. Then we listen to it again, and we spend a little bit of time on that. I don't know. It's either 3 or 6. Okay, we'll ask somebody, and we'd leave it at that. So we never changed the time signature. We change arrangements, we change tempos, but the time signature is usually the groove that it was written in, and the guy writing the groove generally wouldn't know until there was some insight or consensus from the rest of the band, usually directed by Matt, occasionally me. I learned how to count that crap because my mom was a music teacher. My best friend plays saxes, and he would show me those things. Like he tried to teach me how to play a Herbie Hancock song, and I wouldn't be able to learn like how to play it. And he'd like sit there and count it out for me. It's like, I don't get it because I'm 18 and 19 and I can only play Louie Louie. But it was those things. There's just those guys sitting with me going here, and the song Heretic, the chorus part of that is in 3, and it kind of rolls. And I remember Hero thinking that, why are we doing this like that? Why don't we just do it like this? And he started doing it in 4. Because that seems more natural to me. And I go, does it? 3s are really natural. And I think this way kind of rolls. And Chris was like, I agree with Hero. It feels better in 4. And I go, but it seems stiff. It seems when you do it in 4, this chorus, if you listen to the song Heretic, it's in 3. The verse I think is in 4, and the chorus is in like 3 from my memory. And they really wanted to change it to like where it was just 4. They thought that was more natural. And to me, who had wrote the song, it felt blocky in 4. And I kept telling them, we did it that way for a bit, and then I came back to practice. I told them, it feels unnatural in 4. It feels blocky. And they're like, really? What's wrong with you? I go, I just think it should roll there. It should just kind of go like this. And we went back, we recorded it both ways, we listened to it, and Chris, the drummer, said, I think Kim's right. I think it does roll like this. It's kind of cool. Let's do it in 3. And that's why we did it ever since. But that was the only argument we really had about time signatures. The time signature that a song had was what whoever wrote the riff and how they presented it. We never really had to change it. We liked it. We liked the groove. It was the way we walked in here.
No, it has sometimes it just has to be that way. It has to. Outshine couldn't be any other way. And I mean, it's just perfect.
7, right?
Yeah, dude. I mean, I can't tell you the reaction I got from those 2 guys in my band when they were like, "We're not trained monkeys. Do you understand how hard that song? It's not just 1, 2, 3, 4." It's like I was like, "Okay, I didn't realize. I'm sorry." We were about to cover it for Skankfest, and then I was like, let's open with Slipknot. I was like, this crowd is like a bunch of juggalos. They'll be really happy. We're gonna do Outshine. All right, let's get you out of here. Let's do this. Has been great. I have some rapid questions we ask all the guests. Yours are going to be slightly different, but I'm still going to fucking ask them. All right, the first question is, what is your favorite song on this album?
On Superunknown. That changes as we grow and change, It's changed certainly over, what is it now, 25, 28 years, 26 years, something like that.
Yeah.
And sometimes I revisit a song. When I think of Superunknown, the song that pops into my head is Limo Wreck. There's something about that. It's the guitar. It's when Matt brought that demo of that in, it was just amazing. It was colorful. It moved so oddly. When hearing it, when playing it, it felt so natural. It took me a while to learn that thing. It took Chris a while. It took everyone. I mean, it's like, and Matt was showing us that. And we try not to be in weird time signatures. We try not to be, we don't want to be awkward. It's just, you kind of get into this groove and you want to share it with people. And that one was so trippy, and the little harmonics that I play create these kind of cool colors. And when I think of that album, that's what comes to my mind. If I think about playing, I get a different sense. The song 4th of July is I love listening to that song. It's kind of tough to play because the tuning is such that it's really easy to voice those chords off, to like it's hard to make it sound, sonorous and mellifluous. It's real easy to fuck it up because of the tunings. It's real easy to make that chord and have it going, and but the song, 4th of July is amazing. And Like Suicide's amazing. I mean, back then when we recorded it, it really moved me. It evoked an emotive response for me right off the bat. But if you think, but I think Limo Wreck is paradigmatic of that album for me, because if you were to say, hey, this album, Superunknown, that's kind of the song that pops into my head is Limo Wreck. But that doesn't necessarily mean it's paradigmatic of the album for me, but not necessarily the my favorite. Likely it's 4th of July or Like Suicide.
What's your favorite to play though at a live show? If you have to play one of
them, play?
Yeah, to play live.
Probably Superunknown.
Oh fuck yeah, dude! Fuck yeah, dude! All right, this is a weird one because we never asked somebody that's been a part of the record this question. Well, the next 2 actually. What song on this record do you skip over?
Black Hole Sun.
Really? It's just you've heard it so fucking much. You're just like, right.
I've heard so much, and that's not an appraisal of the merits of the song. That's an appraisal of my familiarity with it. And it, like you said, it's a little downtime, and I might skip over it if I'm listening to the album. I might skip over it 2 out of 3 times, and the third time I give it top to bottom listen.
Yeah.
I listen to the solo, I listen to the depth, and I go, yeah, that's and to remind myself of why, why that song's great or strong. But There's got to be something else on there I skip over. It's probably Black Hole Song because it's this Black Hole Song. It's a song that I've heard without intent. You know, it's a song that's been imposed upon me the most. You know, like you're hearing it at a rock show or a radio or it's someone's, you know, it's just one of those houses that is kind of imposed, one of those songs that's imposed upon you, let's say at someone's house or a commercial establishment. So it'd be most likely to skip. It's like, no, I know it.
No, yeah, it's transcended the record. You hear that song, it reminds you, you know, for a lot of people, it reminds you of a time in your life. I mean, it was everywhere. The music video, on the radio, everything. And it's, you know, it's an incredible song, but I get it. Totally get it. This one I'm excited about to ask you. What song on this record would you fuck to?
We just talked about the time signatures, right?
I know. Walk to it. I know, but you got to fuck to one.
Probably Let Me Drown, I guess.
There it is, dude. I'm kickstand all the way. Minute and 34 seconds, dude. I'm in and out, bro. Minute and 34. Sweet, perfect, done. Because I can't. You think I could do to Like Suicide? That's 7 minutes. That's 7 minutes and 1 second, dude. And I guess the last question. I mean, do you feel this deserves to be on the 500 greatest albums list? I mean, it's weird. We've never asked somebody that's been a part of the record, and no ego. I mean, because I do personally, I do. I feel like when you're putting together, when these lists are meaningless, it's always nice to get the accolades, and your band has 100% gotten that through awards and write-ups. But if you're talking about that era in time, you know, from 1990 until, I mean, I guess really, unfortunately, it was the death of Kurt, where grunge really kind of that beauty of that do it yourself, you know, because literally Kurt dies, and next thing you know, you've got Limp Bizkit, and nothing against them, but new metal started coming in, and it was just, you know, that era just, you know, was such a special time in so many people's lives that this is a record that you have to put there. I mean, you have to. It's up there. I'd say you have to put Alice in Chains' Dirt. You have to put this, and you have to put, you know, in both Nirvana records, and even I'd even put Bleach in as well, just because of what, you know, of how like you said, they broke through the stratosphere. But what's your opinion?
What's the specific category? Is it 500 rock albums?
It's Rolling Stone magazine's list of the 500 greatest albums
of all time.
Of all time. This is the 2012 list. The 2021 they just updated. Is this one on there, Adam? On the 2020?
This is not on the 2020.
Ah, you bastards.
Is there? So, well, there should be a Soundgarden album on the
2020 for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
For no other reason than it's part in the lineage of rock music history and its influence, you know, with other artists and musicians and people coming up, and people who are yet to form bands, you know, or people who are forming them as we speak. So if there was one that's representative, it'd probably be this one, which is the biggest selling one.
Yeah.
That's not to say that it's the one that I think is the best critically, or that it's my personal favorite, but it's the one that was the most successful. So it should be the one that would represent a band, that would represent a scene, you know, and a time period in music history. So if you had to do it that way, say rock and roll, significant movements, bands within those movements, albums from those bands, you know, body of work. In that case, I'd say, yeah, Superunknown.
I now I got to ask you. You said it. What is your favorite Soundgarden record?
For years, there's always Screaming Life or Superunknown. I constantly got to remind people that Screaming Life is an album, even though it's not an LP. Everything about it is conceptually an album. You know, it's Sub Pop, Jack Endino studio sessions at Reciprocal. It was our Sub Pop period, which we made two records on Sub Pop. One was more of an album. One was more of a maxi single. You know, the Fop EP was 4 songs built around the song Fop. So, and Matt felt the same way for years. It was Screaming Life, and then Superunknown. So for years it was Screaming Life and Superunknown, and then I revisited Bad Motorfinger while working on the anniversary box about 6 years ago, and I just heard things I'd forgotten about, and that, like Superunknown, is an album that you can kind of stick your hand in and move it around and feel parts of it. It just, you can be immersed in in just in the ambience and in the material. So it kind of went Bad Motor Finger. And I'm sure it'll change again. So yeah, right now it's probably Bad Motor Finger, but I think, you know, Screaming Life and Superunknown have been there, you know, as well.
I mean, just for, I mean, excluding all the hits, just for Slaves and Bulldozers alone,
Yeah.
dude. I couldn't even imagine what that was like hearing him hit those notes in that studio when he recorded. I mean, were you guys just like, what the fuck?
Well, he did that with Beyond the Wheel off of Ultra Mega OK. I mean, he did that, and I wasn't fully. I needed other singers and friends of mine to point that out for me to fully appreciate that how tough it is to do that. As a guitarist, I thought, right on. And I said, hey,
You're like, fuck yeah, dude.
but
Hitting notes.
it took other singers and friends go, how the hell is he doing that? I go, well, he's singing high, and he's got some strong pipes. I go, no, I mean, like, that's crazy. Like, is it? Yeah, it's crazy. Oh, it's kind of crazy. And I have other people point that out to me, because so yeah, that it's the abs. I mean, Chris had strong diaphragm and stomach, you know. And then it's one thing to yell it out there. It's another thing to have the ear and know where you're yelling, and that's what Chris had.
I mean, he had a gift. Everybody. I mean, I read this. I want to end it on this quote. I found this somewhere. It says, "You said this, and tell me if I'm wrong. I think Soundgarden's a pretty good band, and I'm a fine guitarist. I'm not God, but I'm certainly not average. I feel very comfortable with the fact that not many other people can do what I do on guitar. And this is the part that I fucking love. I think my guitar is happy with the way I play it." Did you say that?
I probably stand by that.
I mean, but
I'd say it's a way to understand and define oneself as a musician. Really, I would imagine there's so many great guitars out there. I mean, there are guitarists in every town has some hot shot that's probably better than someone who's making. There's some kid who's 15 or 16 who technically could play circles around whatever is getting all the airplay, you know,
yeah.
these days. And it's always the case. It's just one of those things you can't quantify or measure, something like that. So I look at stylistic distinctions in the way people play. You know, like if I turn on the radio or I'm at someone's house and I hear something, I know when it's Jeff Beck, you know, and I know when it's you know, Hendrix, and it's for just be who you are and honestly have the instrument convey your voice. And then if you are talking in your voice, people will hear it and recognize it. And that's what I think it will distinguish it. If they don't like what you have to say or like the sound of your voice, that's another thing, you know? So I love Jeff Beck, and I can tell when he's playing. So
no, I can't thank you enough for not even just saying that, because that can be applied to stand-up comedy, to acting, to whatever job that you do. It's just like I love the things that you said. Take risks, you just get it out there, don't worry about it, you'll work it out. And I think that's like a perfect way to end it. Kim, thank you, dude. Like I can't thank you enough, man, for coming on today. This was great. You are just the shit. You're the shit,
Joshua, and thank you, Adam. And you know, if you ever have another topic that you want to explore that you think I could add to, I do it.
Oh yeah, dude. Oh yeah, you'll come on. I want to get you talking about a band that you didn't, a record that you didn't make. I want to hear you fanboy out with me.
Sure.
You know what I mean? Because it's like it's great. And seriously, man. I mean this. I said this to Meg before you got on the air. It's like, you know, Black Hole Sun during the pandemic took on a way different thing for me because I found the Nora Jones version of the song,
Oh yeah.
which I think she recorded 4 days after Chris had passed, and at the same theater, I think the last theater he played in, and just the performance. And it was like you said, it was that song that I had the same reaction where it was like, yeah, I love the song, but I heard it so much. It's all the other shit on the record that I love. And then during the pandemic, I went down to Hollywood Forever Cemetery to take mushrooms of all things with a friend, and I sat by Chris's grave and just listened to this record. And then I listened to the Nora Jones version, and just like, and I think it was not just the power of losing somebody that has influenced me, but also just what we were dealing with in the world at the time. And it was just such an expel of emotions that, I mean, the next day I was just like, wow, I feel so much better. It was one of my favorite moments of the entire pandemic, if there could be any.
Wow, right on. Like it gave you some perspective and where you
100%.
fit in the universe right then. It's a sideways universe the past few years. So that's kind of cool that you can orient yourself in that regard, you know.
It's mushrooms. Mushrooms and music, dude. Mushrooms and music. That'll do it for anybody. Kim, thank you, brother.
Thank you, Josh. We'll talk to you in the future.